now like to ask Antonija Primorac to turn us back on the cost action. So the screen is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and a special hello to my two COST members today, Benedict Perak and Luisa from Romania, now in Bulgaria, who gave us the first presentation. I'm going to talk a little bit about our COST action. Luisa already mentioned how she has been involved in providing digitized materials and for the Romanian side of the story, and also about her own involvement as a digital humanities scholar. I am an associate professor at the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences at the University of Rijeka, Croatia, and my work is primarily in English studies, and I joined the COST action because of my interest in theories of world literature and basically how world literature systems develop and spread, especially with the use of translation. Now, before I talk a little bit about the COST action, I want to just briefly explain what a COST action is, because it may not be a familiar concept to most people. COST itself is an acronym from French version of the name of this European Commission program, which is a networking research program of the EU. So basically the idea is to connect already existing national funded researchers and create a space for them by funding activities such as meetings, training schools, short-term scientific missions, or other networking activities on a wide range of scientific topics. And our COST action is just one of the many, I think there are currently 300 running, which basically promote cross-European but also global networking of national funded research. Now, when I say that this is a networking program, it really means that that's basically its focus. It's aiming to bring together people who are interested in particular topics. What it means is that it doesn't provide funding for research itself. So this is supposed to come from the national bodies. And because it is a networking program, you can understand that the last year, the year of the pandemic, has basically put a huge stop at our activities, because one COST action meeting is a super spreader event. And so our last meeting was in Malaga last year, and everything else has been, we've had to sort of adapt and organize events online. And this does kind of impede certain aspects of live events that you cannot simply substitute with online meetings, which means informal gatherings and discussions after the actual workshops and training schools. But we try and make do. And this week also we had a training school which was on NAIR, named entity recognition, and geotagging. And as things are now, we also couldn't hold the last day because of COVID, because one of our trainers fell ill. So we will then organize asynchronous training. So what does COST action distant reading for European literary history focus on? Well, as the name says, the distant reading is the key paradigm, and it uses computational methods of analysis for large collections of literary texts. So it was set up to create a shared theoretical and practical framework to enable innovative, sophisticated, data-driven computational methods of literary text analysis. And the idea was to create corpora across at least 10 European languages. What currently, because of the popularity of the action and of wide interest, not only in Europe, but outside of Europe, we have members from Israel, Australia, and the US. and Brazil. We have currently 27 European and non-European countries involved. So the aim was to foster an insight into cross-national large-scale patterns and evolutions across European literary traditions. And this is a part of the attempt to build and create a new way of looking at comparative literature using computational methods of analysis, to look at basically the spread of certain trends and genres in the period between 1840 and 1920, and see what happens and how much perhaps we can contribute to a new understanding of European literary history. So the focus is on this sort of broader and more inclusive and better grounded account of European literary history, but also cultural identity. So our goal was to build a multilingual European literary text collection, which we refer to as LTEC, which would ultimately contain around 2,500 full text novels in at least 10 different languages. And that will then be used to test methods and compare results across national traditions, and to exchange and establish best practices by developing also computational methods of text analysis, which would be adapted to the European multilingual literary tradition. So as you well know, most of the tools that we have are based on the large languages or the ones that are used in commerce and international exchange, and there's not an equivalent in the tools in smaller languages, and this is a gap that we're hoping to bridge and to contribute to changing. And so basically, ultimately for people like me who are members for theoretical and history of literature reasons, it is also to consider the consequences of such resources and methods for rethinking perhaps some of the fundamental concepts in literary theory and history. And this is something that started to be part of our discussion very early on, when we had to decide on the parameters for the corpora creation, just by arguing over what defines a novel. We realized that from a computational perspective, this is not as easily defined or measured as literary theorists perhaps would assume. Now, we're guided by the FAIR principles, meaning that all the data should be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And every software and data creating framework we use is open source. And this has been the great desire behind this, to make everything accessible and freely available to everyone, both inside the action, but also outside of the action. And that is why our corpus is licensed by a CC BY, a license that everyone can therefore reuse our corpus in different contexts. We're currently using GitHub as a depository and for developing things along the way, because it provides versioning, control, documentation, and communication features. But the goal is to finally use and upload everything to Zenodo. So this idea that eventually everything will be in the open air platform of Zenodo is something we're moving towards. At the moment, for defining and validating encoding texts on different levels of our corpus, we are currently working with mostly level 1. We're using the modeling framework of the text encoding initiative because this is established widely within the TH community. It allows participants to handle different levels of encoding, and it also allows data describing the resource, the encoding schema, as well as the contributing persons. Now, the structure and the workflow is basically organized through working groups, and we have 4 working groups. The group 1 is named Scholarly Resources, and it deals with the actual creation of the corpora. So it was their task to create the parameters of, and they published a white paper on what novels or what texts would classify as novels for this particular corpus. And all these texts, as I said, are readily available on GitHub, and you can access them through our website, which I will provide links for at the end of this presentation. The group 2 is focused on methods and tools and on developing different ways of annotating the texts and analyzing the texts. Group 3, which I belong to and which is basically my purview, is literary theory and history, and it's meant as a kind of control from the theoretical traditional literary point of view. So basically, as a bridge between literary theory up until the introduction of distant reading, and it's supposed to foster a collaboration between the first two groups, and join in when the texts are prepared and the tools have been used, and to sort of work closely with the first two groups to test some of the traditional ideas and concepts, such as what is a novel, or what is a canon, what is canonicity, and what is periodization, and how do we think of periodization when we apply computational methods. Group 4 deals with dissemination. They have the most pleasant job of all of distributing information about the action and promoting the materials that have been published and articles that have been published, etc. Now, what's been achieved so far? And this is the latest update from our website. So this is the LTEX summary page. At the moment, we have 18 language collections, 6 of which meet this minimal planned corpora description, which means that they contain 100 novels each. And of course, you can see from the list that it's basically those with the largest, let's say, literary traditions, and also possibly better digitization traditions as well. So English, French, Slovenian. Slovenian has been by far the most advanced participant in this action because of the ongoing digitization efforts by colleagues in Slovenia. But we also have 0 level Hungarian, level 1 Polish, Portuguese as well. And you can see that Croatia has only recently published a small collection. And I will use in the last bit here of my discussion the example of Croatian corpus as exemplifying some of the key problems that we approach when we deal with participation in this cost action. The main issue isn't so much at the moment for us even the idea or the issues related to tools or encoding, but the sheer availability of digitized text. So we were able to glean only those texts from the period in question that were already digitized, and that doesn't mean much. So we have those from the project Bolaya e-Lectire, so canonical texts for primary and secondary school. We have now received some help from Matica Hrvatska because they've been gracious and offered to provide unedited texts from their own collections, because they have been so let's say the key publisher of Croatian canonical works for over 100 years now. So, so we're basically still dealing with the basic level of digitizing and creating the corpus. And for us, this will be the first and primary obstacle. And I have our lovely member from the Croatian Institute of Language, Maja Matijevich, to thank for her dedicated work on this small corpus that we have at the moment. I can show you what's been done. So if you click on the Croatian sort of sign here, you will get an overview of the novels and their brief descriptions in terms of how many pages there are, how many words, what their size is, what period they come from, who wrote them, the gender of the author, and the level of reprints, which we agreed would be the sort of indication but not definition of canonicity. And you can see that for Croatia, this is so far mostly only male authors. We're hoping to get at least Ivana Brlić-Mažuranić in the next round. And if you click on one of these examples here, which haven't been tagged yet, you can see the description and you can see the text, which is as it is humanly usable. So you can also switch to the TEI version. And you can choose between, let's say, the less canonical or the more canonical works like Šenova's Zlatarevo Zlato. And the whole aim of these small corpuses or corpora was to try and challenge the notion of representative literature. So to include, or at least to try and include more women's work, or work of minorities, and underrepresented or understudied novels as well. So this would briefly be what the cost action is about. I would like to thank you for your attention, and I would like to thank also the co-authors and collaborators.